Kiwan sat in his chair looking at hundreds of screens that showed different planets and star systems all around the galaxy. His job was simple: watch Earth and listen to everything the humans sent into space. For 20 years, he had done this same work every single day, and humans never stopped talking. The humans were the loudest species in the entire galaxy. They sent music and movies and news reports and military messages and silly jokes and love letters and angry arguments all at the same time. 24 hours every day, 7 days every week. They filled the space around their planet with so many signals that other aliens often complained about the noise. But Kiwan liked the humans. They were funny and creative and always doing something. New yesterday, he had listened to a group of human children singing songs about their pet animals while their parents argued about what to cook for dinner. At the same time, human scientists were sharing data about new discoveries, and human soldiers were practicing training exercises. The sounds of Earth were like a giant orchestra that never stopped playing. Today started like every other day. Kiwan arrived at his office in the big tower on Altaris Prime and turned on all his equipment. The screens came alive with colorful waves and patterns, showing all the different signals coming from Earth. Human voices filled his headphones, speaking in dozens of different languages, laughing, crying, shouting, whispering, everything normal, everything, loud, everything very, very human. He poured his morning drink and settled back to start his daily report for the Galactic Council. Earth was sending the usual mix of entertainment broadcasts, news updates, scientific research, and random chatter from billions of people living their lives. The humans had been extra busy this week with some kind of festival where they shot colorful explosions into the sky and ate special foods. Then something strange happened at exactly 1432 Galactic Standard Time. Every single sound from Earth stopped. Not slowly, like when a machine breaks down, not partially like when storms block some signals, but not others. Every human voice, every radio wave, every television broadcast, every internet message, every satellite communication, every single electronic sound from Earth vanished in the same instant. Kiwan thought his equipment had broken. He hit the reset button, checked all the cables, and ran diagnostic tests. Everything worked perfectly. His receivers were fine. His screens showed normal activity from every other planet in his sector, but the section marked Earth showed nothing but flat lines. He called his assistant, Minji, who worked in the next room over. "Hey, Minji, something weird is happening with my Earth monitoring setup. Can you check your equipment?" Minji's voice came through the speaker, sounding confused. "Kiwan, I was just about to call you. My Earth signals just disappeared completely. All at once. Are your screens showing anything?" "No, nothing at all." This has never happened before. Minji ran into his office carrying her portable scanner. Her forearms moved quickly as she checked his equipment from every angle. The scanner beeped and hummed, but showed that everything was working correctly. She looked at Kiwan with her large eyes wide with worry. "This is impossible," she said. "Entire planets do not just stop communicating without any warning. Even when the crystals had their big war, we could still pick up some signals even. When the machine people went into hibernation mode, they kept sending basic status reports." Kiwan nodded his head, understanding exactly what she meant. In 40 years of monitoring space communications, he had never seen anything like this. Planets might reduce their signals during emergencies or disasters, but complete silence from an advanced civilization like humanity was unthinkable. The humans loved talking too much to ever go completely quiet. They immediately contacted their boss director, Yunho, who supervised all communications monitoring for this sector of the galaxy. Yunho was old and experienced and had been doing this job longer than anyone else in the building. If anyone would know what to do, it would be him. Director Yunho arrived. Within minutes, moving faster than Kiwan had ever seen him move before. His tentacles waved frantically as he examined the equipment, ran his own tests, and checked the readings 3 times. He contacted the Central Communications Hub to verify that. Other monitoring stations were seeing the same thing. All across the galaxy, the report was identical. Every station that monitored Earth was showing the same result: complete communications blackout starting at exactly 1432 Galactic Standard Time. No exceptions, no partial signals, no emergency broadcasts, nothing. The director sent urgent messages to the Galactic Council explaining the situation. Within an hour, emergency meetings were starting on dozens of different worlds. Representatives from every major species that had diplomatic relations with Earth demanded immediate explanations. The humans were not just random aliens living far away, they were active members of galactic society with trade agreements, military alliances, and cultural exchange programs. Ambassador Do-Hyun from the Reptilian Coalition sent a priority message asking if Earth was under attack. The Crystalline Empire wanted to know if this was some kind of human military exercise. The Gas Giant Collective demanded immediate investigation by their fastest scout ships. Even the usually quiet machine consciousness sent automated queries asking for status updates, but nobody had answers. The monitoring stations could only report what they observed: complete silence from Earth, with no advance warning, no distress calls, and no explanation. Emergency protocols activated across multiple star systems. Military fleets began preparing for possible rescue or investigation missions. Scientific ships loaded there. Most powerful scanning equipment. Diplomatic vessels prepared to travel to Earth space to find out what had happened. The strange thing was that Earth itself looked completely normal. Long-range telescopes showed that the cities were still lit up. At night, the weather patterns looked typical for the season. The orbital stations around Earth were still in their correct positions and still responding to automated navigation pings. Even the space traffic between Earth and its moon continued, following normal schedules. It was as if 8 billion humans had simply decided to stop using all their communication technology at exactly the same moment. But humans were not organized enough to coordinate something like that across their entire planet. They argued about everything and could barely agree on what day of the week it was. How could they possibly organize complete planetary silence? Kiwan spent the rest of his shift staring at the empty screens where Earth signals should have been appearing. The silence felt heavy and wrong, like listening to a song that suddenly stopped in the middle of the best part. He kept expecting the signals to return any moment for the humans to start talking again about their daily lives. Their hopes, their fears, their silly arguments about sports teams and food recipes. But hours passed and the silence continued. Other aliens working in the monitoring station gathered around his desk to look at the impossible readings. Scientists who usually worked on other projects came to examine the equipment and confirm that yes, Earth had really gone completely quiet. Linguists who specialized in human languages stood quietly looking at the empty translation screens they used to convert human speech into forms other species could understand. By the end of the day, news of Earth silence had spread throughout known space. The incident was being discussed in government buildings on hundreds of worlds. Alien children who had grown up listening to human music and stories asked their parents why the fun sounds from the blue planet had stopped military strategists worried about unknown threats that could silence an entire advanced civilization so completely. As Kiwan prepared to leave his office for the day, he took one last look at his Earth monitoring equipment. The screen still showed flat lines, the audio channels still carried nothing but empty static. The planet that had filled space with constant chatter for as long as anyone could remember remained utterly silent. Walking home through the busy streets of his city, Kaiwan noticed that other aliens were talking about the Earth situation. Conversations in restaurants and public transport focused on theories about what might have happened to the humans. Some people seemed worried, others seemed curious, but everyone seemed to agree that this was not normal. That night, as he lay in his bed trying to sleep, Kiwan realized something that made his stomach feel strange. For 20 years, his life had been filled with human voices. Even when he was not at work, he often thought about the funny or interesting things he had heard humans say during his shift. Their constant chatter had become like background music to his daily routine. Now, for the first time in decades, the humans were not talking, and somehow the entire galaxy felt more quiet and empty than it had before. The Galactic Council building buzzed with activity like a kicked anthill. Representatives from dozens of different species filled the meeting halls, arguing about what could have happened to Earth. Emergency sessions ran around the clock as alien. Diplomats tried to understand how an entire planet could just stop talking. Counselor Dong Yun from the aquatic tribes was the first to present his theory to the gathered assembly. His blue-scaled skin glistened under the bright lights as he spoke. In his deep voice that echoed through the chamber, "My people have experienced something similar." He said, "We had a great sickness many years ago that forced us to stop all communications for safety. The infected could not be near communication devices, or they would spread the disease through electronic signals. Maybe the humans have the same problem." Many aliens nodded their heads, thinking this made sense. Diseases were common throughout the galaxy, and every species had dealt with plagues at some point. But Elder Yuna from the Time-Touched Collective shook her ancient head slowly. Her species lived much longer than others and remembered things that happened centuries ago. Oh, she said in her whisper voice that somehow filled the entire room. "I have seen many plagues and quarantines. They never happen this fast and this complete. Even during our worst disasters, some signals always escape. The humans have orbital stations that are not connected to their planet. Those stations would still be talking if this was about sickness." Representative Sora from the Hive Mind Networks had a much darker idea. Her species had once been individual creatures like humans, but had evolved into a collective consciousness where everyone shared the same thoughts. She stood up on her 6 legs and clicked her mandibles nervously. "Maybe the humans have done what my ancestors did. Maybe they have joined their minds together into one big group mind," she said. "When this happens, individuals stop needing to talk to each other because they already know what everyone is thinking. They become silent to outsiders because they are talking inside their shared consciousness." This idea scared many of the aliens in the room. The Individualist Alliance had always been afraid of species that shared minds. They believed that losing individual thought was worse than death. Their representative, a tall, thin creature with silver skin, stood up quickly. "If the humans have become a hive mind, then they are no longer the species we made agreements with." He declared a collective consciousness thinks differently than individuals. They might decide that their old friendships and treaties do not matter anymore. They might see us as enemies or as lower life, forms that need to be controlled. Arguments broke out across the assembly hall. Some species had positive relationships with hive mind civilizations and thought they were peaceful. Others had fought wars against collective consciousnesses and knew how dangerous they could be. The debate grew louder and more heated as different groups took sides. Admiral Hyun-woo from the Star Kingdom military tried to bring order to the chaos by presenting facts instead of theories. His people were warriors who valued clear thinking and logical planning. He activated a large holographic display showing Earth and its surrounding space. "Look at the evidence," he said, pointing to different parts of the image. Earth orbital stations are still active. There, defense satellites are still working. Their moon bases are still sending basic automated signals. This does not look like a plague or a natural disaster. It looks like something planned and deliberate. He switched the display to show communication patterns from the past month. Before the silence, Earth was sending normal amounts of data. Nothing suggested they were preparing for quarantine or dealing with emergency situations. The silence started suddenly without any warning signs. This suggests either a very fast catastrophe or an intentional action. He continued, "If it was intentional, Then someone or something made all humans stop communicating at the same time. That level of coordination requires either mind control or voluntary cooperation, the energy. Beings who existed as pure electromagnetic force had been listening silently to the debates. Now their representatives spoke through the translation devices, making their voice sound like musical tones. "We have detected something unusual," they sang. "The electromagnetic patterns around Earth have not disappeared. They have changed. Instead of chaotic human communication, we now detect a single, unified pattern. It is complex and mathematical, but it speaks with one voice instead of billions." This new information made everyone in the assembly hall go quiet. The idea that Earth was still communicating, but in a completely different way, had not occurred to anyone before. It suggested that the humans were still alive and still active, but had transformed somehow. Director Minji, who had first discovered the silence with Kiwan, was asked to present her technical analysis. She was nervous speaking to such an important gathering, but she knew her job better than anyone. "The signal we are detecting is not random," she explained. "It contains patterns that suggest intelligence and purpose. It is not natural electromagnetic activity like lightning or solar radiation. It has structure and meaning, but we cannot decode it yet. It is like the humans, learned a completely new language overnight." The debate continued for hours, with new theories emerging as more data became available. Some aliens thought Earth was under attack by unknown enemies who had taken over their communication systems. Others believed the humans had discovered new technology that changed how they interacted with the universe. The Crystalline Empire suggested that Earth might be experimenting with interdimensional communication methods that other species could not detect. The machine consciousness proposed that humans had uploaded themselves into computer systems and no longer needed biological bodies. But every theory had problems. If Earth was under attack, why were the orbital defenses still working normally? If humans had transcended physical existence, why were their cities still populated and active? If they had developed new communication technology, why had they stopped using all their old methods simultaneously? As the emergency session finally ended, near dawn on the council world, one thing was clear. Nobody understood what had happened to Earth, and everyone was scared. The humans had been reliable partners and allies for over 200 years. Their sudden transformation into something unknown threatened the stability of galactic politics. Military commanders began moving fleets toward the Sol system. Scientists prepared their most advanced scanning equipment. Diplomats drafted messages demanding explanations that they knew would probably go unanswered. The galaxy was preparing for the possibility that humanity was no longer humanity. Ambassador Kyung-min from the Peaceful Assembly tried to calm the growing panic by reminding everyone that humans had always been unpredictable but generally friendly. They had never shown aggression toward other species and had helped solve many interplanetary conflicts through negotiation and compromise. But even she had to admit that something fundamental had changed. The humans who loved to talk and share stories and argue about everything had gone completely silent. That was so unlike their nature that it suggested either disaster or evolution into something entirely different as alien representatives returned to their ships and home worlds to report what they had learned. The mood throughout the galaxy grew tense. Trade routes that passed through human space were rerouted. Military patrols increased around systems bordering human territory. Some species began preparing for possible war, while others hoped for peaceful first contact with whatever humanity had become. On the monitoring station where Kiwan worked, the screens still showed the same mysterious unified signal coming from Earth. It pulsed steadily, like a heartbeat or breathing, suggesting that whatever was happening on the human world was alive and active. But without understanding the new communication method, nobody could know if the signals were friendly greetings or warnings to stay away. Galaxy held its breath, waiting to learn whether humanity had found a new way to exist or had been replaced by something else entirely. Despite all the arguments and fears, the Galactic Council finally agreed that someone needed to go to Earth and find out what had happened. A joint fleet would travel to the Sol system, carrying representatives from 17 different species. Each ship would bring their best sensors and their most experienced crews. Commander Tae-hyun was chosen to lead the mission partly because he had worked closely with humans for many years, and partly because his feline ancestry gave him excellent intuition. His ship was actually built by humans called Unity Voice and had been used for diplomatic missions between Earth and other worlds. The crew of Unity Voice was unusual because even though it was a human-designed ship, no humans served on it anymore. Since Earth went silent, all humans working in space had been recalled to their home planet. The alien crew members who remained had learned to operate human technology, but they missed their former colleagues. Engineer Hyejin belonged to the Silicon-based coalition, and her crystalline body could interface directly with computer systems. She had served alongside human engineers for 5 years and considered many of them close friends. Now, as she ran diagnostic tests on the ship systems, she worried about what they might find when they reached Earth. The journey to Sol system took 3 weeks using the fastest hyperspace routes available. During the trip, the different alien crews shared information and theories about what might have happened to humanity. Some remained optimistic, thinking the humans had simply developed better technology. Others prepared for the worst-case scenarios, including the possibility that Earth was now controlled by hostile forces as they traveled deeper into human space. They began noticing strange things. The automated beacon systems that helped ships navigate were still working, but they were broadcasting additional data packets, along with the standard navigation information. These extra signals contained mathematical sequences, coordinate lists, and what looked like countdown timers. Captain Jinwoo from the atmospheric dwellers recognized the pattern first. His species communicated by controlling weather and creating messages in cloud formations and wind currents. The additional signals from the navigation beacons reminded him of how his people spoke, but with technological precision that natural weather could never achieve. When the fleet reached Neptune orbit, they encountered Earth outer defense perimeter. The automated systems challenged their approach, just as they always had, asking for identification codes and stating their purpose for entering human space. But the responses came back with subtle differences. The authentication process worked normally, but embedded within the standard security protocols were additional data streams. The codes were correct, and the defense systems recognized the diplomatic fleet as authorized visitors. But there were new layers of information that no one in the fleet could decode. Communications Officer Minho from the Empathic Collective was the first to realize that the extra data was not random noise. It had structure and meaning like a language, but unlike any communication method. In the galactic databases, he spent hours analyzing the patterns and finally concluded that Earth was trying to communicate using the existing defense network. The fleet held position at Mars orbit, while the commanders debated whether to continue. Some crews reported having strange dreams during their rest periods. They dreamed of human cities where people moved in perfect coordination, like dancers following the same music. They saw humans working together on massive projects without needing to speak or give orders because everyone somehow knew what needed to be done. Others experienced brief moments of shared consciousness where they could feel the thoughts and emotions of their crewmates. These episodes lasted only seconds, but they were unlike anything the aliens had experienced before. It was as if being near Earth was affecting their minds in subtle ways. Dr. So-young from the Medical Research Division studied the reported effects and found them harmless but significant. The aliens were not being controlled or manipulated, but they were receiving impressions of enhanced cooperation and shared understanding. It suggested that whatever had happened to humanity involved some kind of consciousness expansion. As they moved closer to Earth, the effects became stronger. Alien crew members who had never been particularly cooperative began working together more efficiently. Teams that usually competed with each other started sharing resources and information without being asked. Security officers found themselves anticipating problems before they occurred and solving them through coordinated responses. Commander Tae-hyun realized that Earth was not just communicating through technology. The planet itself seemed to be broadcasting some kind of mental field that enhanced cooperation and understanding among nearby minds. It was subtle and non-invasive, but it was definitely having an effect on the joint fleet. The revelation came when they reached lunar orbit. Communication Officer Minho suddenly sat up straight at his console, his eyes wide with surprise and wonder. He had been monitoring the strange signals from Earth when something changed in his perception. The random-seeming data patterns suddenly made perfect sense. "They are talking to me," he whispered. "They are talking to all of us. Earth is requesting formal diplomatic contact, but they want to do it using new protocols. They are not the same humans we knew before, but they are still humans. They have just become something more." The message that Minho received was unlike anything transmitted through normal communication channels. It came directly into his mind, but not as an invasion or attack. It was more like someone gently knocking on a door and waiting for permission to enter. The information was complex, but easy to understand, containing explanations, technical details, and emotional context, all at the same time. Earth wanted to meet with representatives from the galactic community, but they warned that the humans had undergone voluntary evolution. They had learned to connect their consciousness through advanced technology, creating a hybrid existence that maintained individual identity while enabling species-wide coordination. Silence had not been an emergency or disaster. It had been preparation. They had spent weeks learning to control their new abilities and coordinate their thoughts before attempting to communicate with other species. They were ready now to explain what had happened, and to demonstrate that they were still the same humans who valued friendship and cooperation with other worlds. But they also warned that returning to old communication methods was becoming difficult for them. Speaking with individual voices when they could share thoughts directly felt inefficient and limited. They requested that the meeting take place on Luna, the moon base that had been humanity's first major colony outside Earth. The location was symbolic, representing humanity. Expansion into space while remaining neutral ground that would not overwhelm alien visitors with the full intensity of Earth's new consciousness field. The humans promised that their representatives would maintain individual awareness during negotiations, but they could not guarantee that the experience would be exactly like dealing with pre-evolution humanity. Commander Tae-hyun consulted with the other fleet commanders, and they agreed to accept Earth invitation. The risks seemed minimal, and the potential for understanding this transformation was too important to ignore. But as they prepared for what might be the most significant first contact event in galactic history, everyone wondered whether they were about to meet humans or something that had once been human, but was now entirely different. The journey to Luna took only a few hours, but it felt much longer as alien diplomats prepared for an encounter unlike anything in their experience. They were about to speak with a species that had voluntarily evolved beyond individual consciousness while claiming to retain their essential humanity. As they approached the lunar base, the strange mental effects grew stronger. Alien crew members found themselves thinking in harmony, feeling connected to each other in ways that transcended their different species' origins. For the first time, they began to understand what the humans might have experienced when they chose to link their minds together. The lunar base looked exactly as it always had, with the same architectural style and the same welcoming signals that had guided visitors for decades. But now it felt different, charged with potential and possibilities that had not existed before. Whatever waited inside would either confirm humanity's continued existence or reveal what they had become. News of Ambassador Kyungmin meeting with the transformed humans spread across the galaxy faster than hyperspace travel could carry it. The quantum communication networks that connected major worlds buzzed with reports, debates, and arguments as different species tried to understand what humanity had become. The Individualist Alliance was the first to respond with an official statement. Their Supreme Council declared that the humans were no longer the species they had made treaties and trade agreements with. They announced immediate suspension of all diplomatic relations and warned their member worlds to avoid human space until further notice. We cannot negotiate with a collective consciousness. Their statement read, individual identity is sacred, and any species that abandons it has abandoned the foundation of civilized society. We do not recognize these enhanced humans as legitimate representatives of humanity. The unity seekers had the opposite reaction. Their representatives sent urgent requests to Earth asking for immediate access to the consciousness-linking technology. They offered to trade valuable resources, advanced scientific knowledge, and exclusive military alliances in exchange for help achieving their own species-wide mental connection. The hive mind networks were fascinated but cautious. They had achieved collective consciousness through biological evolution over millions of years. The idea that another species could accomplish the same thing through technology in just a few decades was both impressive and concerning. Most other species adopted a careful wait-and-see approach. They continued normal diplomatic relations, but increased security around their borders with human space. Military fleets positioned themselves strategically to respond quickly if the transformed humans showed signs of aggression or expansion. On Earth itself, the humans were adapting to their new existence with remarkable speed. The learning curve had been steep during the weeks of silence, but now that they could coordinate perfectly, their productivity and efficiency had increased dramatically. Projects that would have taken years to complete were finished in months. Infrastructure improvements happened overnight. As millions of humans worked together with perfect coordination, scientific research accelerated as every human researcher could instantly access the knowledge and insights of their colleagues. But the most remarkable change was in how humans approached problems that had previously seemed impossible to solve. Environmental restoration happened at unprecedented speed as humans coordinated efforts across the entire planet. Social problems that had persisted for generations were addressed through collective wisdom and shared resources. The transformation also revealed new capabilities that surprised even the humans themselves. When they focused their collective consciousness on specific challenges, they could process information and generate solutions at rates that individual minds could never achieve. Their first major test came sooner than anyone expected. The Outer Rim crisis began when 3 star systems faced extinction due to a cascading stellar collapse that would destroy dozens of inhabited planets within months. The disaster was too large and complex for any single species to handle. Traditional galactic response would have involved lengthy committee meetings, resource allocation debates, and coordination problems between different military and rescue organizations. By the time help arrived, millions of beings would have died, but Earth's response was immediate and comprehensive. Within hours of learning about the crisis, the humans had analyzed the situation, calculated optimal solutions, and begun coordinating with their allies. The efficiency was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships appeared throughout the affected region, carrying specialized equipment and emergency supplies. Human engineers worked alongside alien technical teams, sharing knowledge and expertise instantly through their neural links. Human coordinators managed logistics across multiple star systems without any communication delays or misunderstandings. The rescue operation saved billions of lives and prevented the collapse from spreading to additional systems. Species that had been suspicious of humanity, new consciousness witnessed firsthand how the enhanced coordination could benefit everyone. The humans had used their collective abilities not for conquest or dominance, but for helping others. After the crisis ended, many species began reconsidering their positions on humanity transformation. The practical benefits were undeniable when humans could coordinate instantly. Across their entire species, they could respond to emergencies, solve complex problems, and manage large-scale projects with incredible effectiveness, but challenges remained. Other species struggled to compete with humanity, unified decision-making, in trade negotiations and resource allocation. The humans could analyze deals instantly, access the knowledge of their best negotiators, and present coordinated positions that gave them significant advantages. Some civilizations felt intimidated by dealing with representatives who could draw upon the collective intelligence of 8 billion minds. Diplomatic meetings became unbalanced when human negotiators could instantly consult with experts in every relevant field, while their counterparts had to rely on individual knowledge and experience. The humans recognized these problems and began developing solutions. They established protocols for deliberately limiting their collective advantages during negotiations. They created separate colonies and communities for interactions that required traditional individual-to-individual relationships. Most importantly, they began offering to share their consciousness, linking technology with other species, but with careful warnings about the requirements. For success, the process required absolute trust, genuine desire for unity, and strong individual identity to prevent absorption into collective conformity. The technology worked best for species that already valued both individuality and cooperation. Cultures that were too focused on independence could not achieve the necessary unity, while societies that emphasized conformity lost the individual creativity that made collective consciousness valuable. Several species began experimental programs to develop their own versions of consciousness. Linking the energy beings found that they could enhance their natural electromagnetic connections. The crystalline empire discovered ways to share information through their mineral-based neural networks. But no species achieved results as dramatic as humanity had. The humans seemed uniquely suited for this type of evolution. Their culture already balanced individual creativity with collective cooperation. Their brains had the flexibility to adapt to shared consciousness without losing personal identity. As months passed, a new normal emerged in galactic politics. Earth became the premier mediator and information broker in known space. Their ability to understand multiple perspectives simultaneously made them ideal for resolving conflicts between other species. The Galactic Council adapted its procedures to accommodate humanity. New communication methods. Installing quantum interface systems that allowed humans to participate in discussions without overwhelming other species with their collective presence. The humans learned to modulate their unified voice carefully. Sometimes they spoke as individuals when dealing with personal matters. Sometimes they spoke as communities when representing local interests. Sometimes they spoke as their entire species when addressing major galactic issues. Trade relationships evolved as other species found new ways to benefit from humanity-enhanced capabilities. Human research teams could solve scientific problems that had puzzled other civilizations for centuries. Human coordinators could manage complex interstellar projects with unprecedented efficiency. Cultural exchanges became more interesting as humans could share not just individual art and literature but collective experiences and perspectives. They created new forms of entertainment that could only exist through shared consciousness, while maintaining traditional individual expression. Military alliances grew stronger as human forces could coordinate with perfect efficiency and share tactical information instantly. But the humans also proved that their collective consciousness made them more peaceful rather than more aggressive. They had gained the ability to see conflicts from multiple perspectives simultaneously, which made diplomatic solutions more appealing than military ones. The transformation had succeeded beyond even the humans' original expectations. They had not lost their humanity in becoming more than human. They had found a way to preserve individual creativity and emotion while gaining collective wisdom and coordination. Years later, when young aliens asked their elders about the day Earth went silent, they would hear stories of fear and confusion. followed by wonder and admiration. Humanity had proven that evolution could enhance rather than replace the qualities that made a species valuable to galactic civilization. The silence had ended, but what emerged was a voice more powerful and beautiful than what had existed before. It spoke sometimes as one, sometimes as many, but always with the unmistakable creativity and warmth that made humans special in the vast community of stars. 5 years had passed since Earth went silent, and the galaxy had learned to live with humanity's new form of existence. The initial fear and confusion had given way to acceptance and even admiration as other species discovered the benefits of working with a truly unified civilization. The Galactic Council chambers looked different now, with special quantum interface stations that allowed human representatives to participate in discussions without overwhelming other delegates with their collective consciousness. The technology had been developed through cooperation between human engineers and alien scientists working together to solve the communication challenges. Ambassador Jae-hyun sat at the human interface station preparing for another session of trade negotiations. His individual personality remained distinct and recognizable to aliens who had known him before the transformation, but now he could instantly access the knowledge and experience of every human expert in economics, diplomacy, and interstellar commerce. Across from him sat representatives from the Mineral Extraction Consortium who wanted to establish new mining operations in human-controlled space. The negotiations were complex, involving environmental protection, trade quotas, and technology sharing agreements. Before the transformation, such talks might have lasted months as human negotiators consulted with experts, sought approval from their governments, and tried to coordinate responses across their scattered political systems. Now Jae-hyun could present unified positions that reflected the collective wisdom of his entire species, but he was careful not to abuse this advantage. The humans had learned that overwhelming other species with their enhanced capabilities damaged relationships and created resentment. Instead, they deliberately limited their collective input during negotiations to maintain fairness and encourage cooperation. The session went smoothly with both sides reaching agreements that satisfied everyone involved. The Mineral Extraction Consortium would get access to valuable asteroid fields, while Earth would receive advanced mining technology and environmental protection guarantees. It was the kind of win-win solution that had become common when humans were involved in negotiations. After the formal session ended, Ambassador Jae-hyun walked through the corridors of the council building, greeting colleagues from dozens of different species. Many of them had initially been afraid of humanity transformation, but personal relationships had helped overcome those fears. He stopped to chat with Counselor Soyeon from the agricultural worlds, who was dealing with crop failures on several planets. The problem was complex, involving climate changes, soil chemistry, and pest management across multiple ecosystems. "Would your people be willing to help?" she asked. "I know your collective consciousness can process complex data quickly, and our individual experts are struggling to find solutions." Of course, Jae-hyun replied, "I will connect you with our agricultural coordination network. They can analyze your data and suggest solutions within hours instead of months. But we will present our recommendations as suggestions, not demands. The final decisions must remain with your people." This had become the standard approach for human assistance. Other species brought them complex problems, and humans provided solutions, but always with respect for alien autonomy and decision-making authority. The transformed humans had learned that their enhanced capabilities came with responsibilities to use them wisely. Later that day, Jae-hyun returned to his quarters and allowed his individual consciousness to merge more fully with the collective experience. Instantly, he was aware of thousands of ongoing projects and conversations happening simultaneously across human space. On Mars, human terraforming teams were coordinating atmospheric changes with precision impossible for individual planners. On Europa, research stations were sharing discoveries about alien life forms in the subsurface oceans. On distant colony worlds, human settlers were adapting to alien environments with collective wisdom drawn from all previous colonization efforts, but humanity expansion had not been aggressive or dominating. Instead, they had focused on cooperation and mutual benefit. Human colonies were often joint ventures with other species, combining human organizational abilities with alien expertise in local conditions. The consciousness network also carried cultural experiences that enriched every human life. Musicians could share not just their compositions, but the emotions and inspirations behind them. Scientists could communicate not just data, but the excitement of discovery. Writers could share not just stories, but the creative process that produced them. Children growing up in this enhanced environment developed capabilities that amazed their parents. They learned faster, thought more creatively, and showed natural abilities for cooperation that previous generations had to struggle to achieve. But they also maintained strong individual personalities and the rebellious curiosity that had always characterized young humans. Education had been revolutionized as teachers could instantly access the knowledge of every expert in their fields, while students could tap into learning experiences from millions of their peers. Complex subjects that once took years to master could be understood in weeks when learners could share insights and perspectives. Scientific research accelerated beyond all previous expectations. When every human scientist could instantly access the discoveries and hypotheses of their colleagues, breakthrough insights happened almost daily. Problems that had puzzled researchers for decades were solved through collective analysis and shared creativity. Medical advances came rapidly as doctors could share diagnostic experiences and treatment outcomes across the entire profession. Diseases that had been incurable were conquered through coordinated research efforts, drawing on the expertise of every medical professional in human space. But perhaps the most remarkable change was in how humans approached conflicts and disagreements. Linked consciousness made it impossible to ignore other perspectives. When people could directly experience how their actions affected others, empathy and understanding became natural responses. Wars became unthinkable. Not because humans had lost their competitive nature, but because they could see conflicts from all sides simultaneously. Disputes were resolved through collective wisdom that found solutions satisfying everyone involved. The transformation had not eliminated human emotions or reduced them to mechanical efficiency. Instead, it had enhanced emotional intelligence and made feelings more meaningful. When joy could be shared, it became more intense. When sadness could be comforted by millions of supportive minds, it became bearable. Art and entertainment reached new heights of creativity and impact. Musicians composed symphonies that could only be fully appreciated through shared consciousness. Writers created stories that engaged readers. On multiple levels, simultaneously, visual artists produced works that communicated complex ideas and emotions directly to viewers. Other species began developing their own versions of consciousness, linking technology with varying degrees of success. The energy beings enhanced their natural electromagnetic connections, allowing faster coordination across their distributed existence. The aquatic tribes developed biological networks that improved their collective decision-making. But no species achieved the same dramatic transformation that humanity had experienced. Most alien attempts at consciousness linking resulted in either loss of individuality or failure to achieve meaningful coordination. The humans seemed uniquely suited for this evolution. Some scientists theorized that humanity's success came from their cultural background. Humans had always been social creatures who valued both individual achievement and group cooperation. Their brains had evolved for complex communication, and their societies had developed sophisticated methods for balancing personal freedom with collective responsibility. Others believed that the timing had been perfect. Humanity had reached a level of technological development that made consciousness, linking possible while maintaining enough individual diversity to prevent homogenization into a boring collective mind. Whatever the reasons, humanity transformation had created something unprecedented in galactic history. They had become a species that could think and act as one when necessary, while preserving the creativity, diversity, and emotional richness that made them valuable partners and friends. The galaxy was a better place because of their evolution. Conflicts were resolved more peacefully through human mediation. Complex projects were completed more efficiently with human coordination. Scientific discoveries were shared more rapidly through human research, networks. Trade became fairer as humans used their collective wisdom to identify win-win solutions. Environmental problems were addressed more effectively through human organizational capabilities. Cultural exchanges were enriched by humanity's ability to share experiences across their entire civilization. On quiet evenings when the collective consciousness relaxed and individual humans enjoyed personal time, many of them reflected on what they had gained and what they had given up. The transformation had cost them some spontaneity and the simple pleasure of private thoughts, but they had gained something far more valuable. They had become truly united as a species while remaining diverse as individuals. They had found a way to combine the best aspects of collective action with the creativity that came from individual expression. Children born after the arena remained silent as Emperor Vextar's words echoed off the metal walls. Earth will remain free. The simple statement carried the weight of changing galactic history, but everyone present knew that something much bigger was happening. The human had not just won a fight. He had revealed that everything the Corvan Empire believed about power was wrong. Dr. Han Yu-Na watched from the viewing box as alien medical teams worked frantically over Brutak's massive form. They were using scanners and devices she had never seen before, but it was clear they were struggling to understand what had happened to their champion. His body showed no serious injuries, yet he remained completely unable to move or fight. The realization was spreading through the crowd like wildfire. If the Empire's greatest warrior could be defeated so easily by techniques they did not understand, then what other assumptions were wrong? The Corvan military had conquered hundreds of worlds through superior strength and technology, but this human had used neither. Captain Lee So-Jin felt her mind racing as she considered the implications. This victory would send shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Every enslaved species would hear about the day a single human defeated Brutak the Destroyer. Some would start planning rebellions, others would begin studying human fighting methods. General Park Minho understood military strategy better than anyone else in Earth delegation. He could see that this moment would reshape galactic politics. The Empire had ruled through fear and intimidation, but fear only worked when people believed you were unbeatable. That belief had just been shattered in 10 seconds. Emperor Vextar descended slowly from his crystal throne, his golden skin reflecting the arena lights. His advisors followed close behind, whispering urgently in his ears about damage control and political consequences. But the Emperor was thinking about something much more important. The future of his empire. Taeho remained standing calmly in the center of the arena, waiting to see what would happen next. His SEAL training had taught him to stay alert even after a mission was complete. Victory could be more dangerous than defeat because it made you a target. He could feel thousands of alien eyes studying him, trying to understand how he had done the impossible. The crowd was beginning to stir as shock gave way to other emotions. Some aliens were angry that their champion had lost. Others were fascinated by the human fighting techniques. A few were already placing bets on whether other human warriors could repeat this performance. The mood was shifting from celebration to uncertainty. Corvan military officers throughout the arena were having heated discussions about what this meant for their combat doctrine. If human techniques could neutralize their physical advantages, then their entire approach to warfare needed to be reconsidered. The strategic implications were staggering. Dr. Han Yuna realized that she was watching the birth of a new field of study. Comparative combat analysis between species would become crucial for understanding galactic military balance. She had data on dozens of alien anatomies, and now she knew that human fighting methods could exploit weaknesses in all of them. Emperor Vextar reached the arena floor and walked slowly toward Taeho. His massive form towered over the human, but there was no longer any sense of intimidation. The small warrior had just proven that size meant nothing when facing superior technique and training. The medical team finally managed to help Brutok to his feet, though he still needed support to stand. His forearms were beginning to respond to commands again, but slowly and weakly. The nerve disruption techniques that Taeho had used were temporary but devastatingly effective. Brutok looked at the human who had defeated him with genuine curiosity rather than anger. He had fought warriors from dozens of species and learned their techniques, but this was completely different. The human had not tried to overpower him, instead systematically shutting down his ability to fight back. Captain Lee, Sojin stood and addressed the arena through the communication system. Commander Kim Tae-ho has proven that humanity deserves respect as an equal species, not conquest as a primitive one. We hope this can be the beginning of friendship rather than the end of hostility. The crowd murmured at this unexpected offer. Most conquered species begged for mercy or tried to negotiate better terms of surrender. But the humans were offering partnership from a position of strength. That was something the Empire had rarely encountered. Emperor Vextar stopped directly in front of Taeho and studied the small warrior who had just changed everything. The human showed no fear, no arrogance, just calm professionalism, like a soldier waiting for orders. This was not what he had expected from a primitive species. Military advisors were already calculating the implications if humans could train other conquered species in these fighting techniques, if they could share their anatomical knowledge with rebellion groups, if they could teach others to turn Corvin's strength against them. The Empire faced a crisis unlike any in its history. Dr. Han Yuna was documenting everything she observed about Corvin reactions to defeat. The psychological impact seemed even greater than the physical victory. Their entire worldview was built on the idea that might made right, and that had just been proven false by a species they had dismissed as weak. The Emperor raised his hand, and the arena fell silent again. He was about to make a decision that would affect billions of lives across hundreds of worlds. The question was whether he would try to contain this threat or embrace the opportunity it represented. Taeho waited patiently for the Emperor to speak his mission. Parameters had been simple: win the fight or die trying. He had accomplished the first part, but now he was in uncharted territory. Whatever happened next would determine not just Earth's future, but the future of human expansion into the galaxy. The silence stretched on as Emperor Vextar considered his options. He could try to minimize the impact of this defeat, or he could acknowledge what everyone had just witnessed, the dawn of a new era in galactic relations. His next words would echo through history. Finally, the Emperor spoke, and his voice carried clearly through the arena. You have shown us something we did not know existed. Commander, a form of strength we had not encountered. We are curious to learn more about your species and your methods. The offer hung in the air like electricity. Everyone present understood that they were witnessing the first diplomatic contact between equals rather than conqueror and conquered. It was a moment that would be remembered for generations across 1,000 worlds.